Ashitile to everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the third day of the 11th Amitabha Recitation Retreat. For our friends who just joined us today, the teachings by Rinpoche will be translated into different languages. If your language is English, please stay here in this room where our English translator is Ina. And to listen into other languages like Chinese, which is being translated by Hana, Vietnamese by Lanan, Japanese by Misao, please make a selection using the globe icon that says interpretation. And for our Dharma friends who have yet to download our virtual Zoom background here, so we encourage everyone to do so and greet Rinpoche with this background. Our admin has copied the file on the chat room for everyone to download it. So this very beautiful image of the multiple Buddha Amitabhas in the rainbow spheres was designed by His Eminence Garchen Rinpoche. And he said that this image is very precious, reminds us that Amitabha is not a single form, but it is also a myriad of Amitabhas above the crown of every sentient beings. So please do download them and use it. Thank you very much. And next to our panelists, please again rename yourself to the name that you have registered. So this is for our admin team to identify you so that it's easier for us to troubleshoot in case of any issues. Today is also a very special day. It's the start of the month-long Hungry Ghost Festival, especially for the Chinese customs. And during this period, we usually make offerings to ancestors, to departed relatives and friends, and of course also to the hungry ghost spirits. One excellent way to help them is to accumulate merits through the Changshuk Puja, where they receive the merits of the retreat and thereby making their afterlives better. The registrations for the Changchuk Puja will close tomorrow at 1 p.m. So if you have yet to do so, you may register them via the registration link that our admin will post on the chat group itself. So this is an excellent way to bring merits to all the sentient beings, for the departed ones, and for our ancestors. Right now, I'll pass it over to Chow, who will explain to our Vietnamese friends on choosing the Vietnamese channels. Chow?
Thưa quý vị đạo hữu Việt Nam, thì các quý vị đã quen rồi, quý vị có thể sử dụng cái nút quả cầu ở trên cái thanh điều khiển của mình để mà mình chọn cái ngôn ngữ và để mà mình nghe tiếng Việt. Ban tổ chức cũng có nhắc tới một vài thông tin, nhưng mà những cái phần đó là quý vị có thể nghe được khi mà quý vị bấm vào quả cầu và mình nghe tiếng Việt. Nếu mà mình chưa có nghe được tiếng Việt thì mình thoát ra và mình cần phải cập nhật cái phiên bản mới nhất thì mình mới có thể nghe được tiếng Việt ạ. Và chúng ta sẽ bắt đầu chương trình rất là sớm ạ. Thank you, Chin.
Ashitile Rinpoche.
To all the Dharma friends and the disciples who are joining on the live stream all over the world, and good morning.
We'll begin with the Yellow Prayer Book, opening prayers on page 1, once in Tibetan and twice in English.
Tarpa dam dam jen jen be par du ju bar se dam je je zon se be ma nam ka da nyam sim je tham je de va dan de Dongadanja Yurdulana Yanda Badobe Sanjo Rinpoche Topazai.
All Mother Sentient Beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All Mother Sentient Beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment.
Mashi Pardulunga Yesum Devalaku Tuterene Sumde Nyama Santa Samje Pardulunga Yesum Devalaku.
For that purpose, until I attain Buddhahood, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Until death, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. From today until this time tomorrow, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Page 7 for the mandala offering.
Ram jam jam so singen jor pe so ma le lo ye lang de ber la na ten ye do gon to je zong de so da le long juan do ba jin chi dang Hong Kong Jin Jian Ta Yong De Mar Jie Da De Zong Me Ngu Po Jir Ce Gong Ber Jie Dan Zhen Xie Wa Xin Jie Lo Nge Dan Nge Mian Ta Le Yong Zhe Xin Jian Da Ne Song Zhou Wong Ta Xie Jie Meng Xin Len De Ne Lo Men Dan Chou Per Ve San Jie To Par Xin Yi Lo.
An infinite array of worlds, each with 4 continents and the wealth of infinite oceans of realms, if I bring them all to mind and offer them without exception, please hold with compassion all the beings they contain. My body, enjoyments, and whatever I own, my aggregates, elements, and sense sources, my aspirations now and in times to come, as well as everything I grasp as mine, by offering them all, may I be blessed with the end of self-grasping, completely liberated from the bounds of real and unreal, transcending the names and concepts of arising, cessation, and abiding, coming and going, affirmation and denial. The Supreme Mandala is the natural state. By offering it, may I be blessed to attain the state of Buddhahood.
Om Guru Deva Jai Generena Mandala Padeza Sova.
Page 10.
Sem Janam Jasambadam Loye Sera Jadawa Che Chong Tu Mong Te Ba Ye Chu Jian Ko Lo Ko Du Su.
Please turn the wheel of the Dharma of the greater and lesser vehicles and the teachings common to both according to the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings.
Gendula Lo, Doja Tele, Baba Mela, Chidaka Baba, Pomoruba Javon, Kajulama Namaso, the Omichi, Baba, to Sajako Yamoni, Rasem Chokok, Santo Deba, Lamia, the Sodom Lokaja Chujin, Yasomi, which was Gilos, Sentient, the Dachina. Tamba Chujan and the there is a to talk about Katan, a traditional Coca, actually, a what sent Nepali, a synthetic ne, the Santong, Santong, or Junatari, Santong, what sent Nepal, you would insect, you would easy alcohol, a traditional. Not among not to send the Diachimore, King on the unit the date of Priore, date of the territory, Jimin Arbes, which a nigger, Zegna Majin Bar, Santong Meton Tong, so awesome, that's a check the ordinary. She laid the Diachimore, Himbati, the Santong, she was a second look so Not you may tell the name and it, suppressing queen, the Shibata, so no thing on the Shibati, Shibating water, Shibarang water, Sotak the Matri, Shibarang water, Tanapata, child glory. Oh, that's a bit of later, Santong, Mamma Tonga, the Chile, she bought the Zen Magi person to say, Chile, name of you looked at the Cassico, they knew young Yori. The Santong Shiba shop take or tell they the half, only 3 young Soa Shimbati, Shiba Chamutia, they have all. Oh, Shiba Chamutia, the tea, Shimba of a dark committee. You put their cassette, they do your knee, don't do me, good or down to me. They chuck it out, there's a gum. 2 cheats of the check your money. 200 men a day a check up for your Amatamito di somewhere. But I thought Chanel, they charge 2 million to go with him, my lap. They charge the kids for your money. 2 of them, they charge the kids for your money. 2 later, Nimti. You done it, teaching the dumb about Teta child or a ticker with the Shimba to have over, but the Cheta Nena, young teen is that nature Jung, the doctor Mari, nature Jung to be gone to be on Mareson, Yerton Lachimo, that Goliotan, says several no child, and then somebody Sayanti, not what the English. They might say Nena, and name money she. So I said, what they, Santong Yam Drove, they thought the Senator, Santong Tawashi, the Shimpi Shibatis, Gergeton, not to Tamchetan, Travetemi, to watch Harry. Generally, she was so Neo Party here. The she was so what you attack it, 3 Ramji, Jinkitis, who the Sakin, so. Jump so shares down methodology. So, get so up this jump to our so. The leader, sucking keeper coming, testation, or be jump to Laptavaji, some movement by no so. Nature, the name and nearly nipple swimming on each with Plankton, the George, she was out they have one, the Shiba Chamot in a Hako, the Hako something that was some Hako after the so as sympathy, young Ramji, Tato, that I should have left the Sango should up there.
So then, Dharma friends, to continue the teachings from yesterday. So yesterday I spoke about Shamatha, or calm abiding. We have said that Shamatha is your ability to abide still, calm, in a single pointed state. And then also we spoke about Vipassana, the special insight. And Vipassana, or this insight, recognizes the quality of calm abiding, of the abiding mind. It recognizes the quality of the mind. And so the calm abiding mind, when the mind is completely tranquil and calm, then that is a state where there are no thoughts in the mind, no emotions in the mind, no afflictive emotions. And the experience again is that that state is a very blissful state. And because it is very blissful, in that state of shamatha, you are able to stay within that state for a long time. But Milarepa had said that do not become attached or do not cling to like the kind of the sprout of shamatha, kind of when it first the experience of bliss arises, but train in the flower of vipassana. So in shamatha there is experience of bliss, and because bliss arises, because it's very a comfortable, blissful state, an attachment to that state arises, and that's why one is able to always stay within that state. And then you bring in vipassana, the insight that knows that recognizes whether or not thoughts are present and which thoughts are present. The most subtle thoughts of attachment. So the awareness that is the vigilant awareness that recognizes all of these subtle thoughts is the vipassana. And so that awareness is what you need to look at. You need to look at the essence, the nature of this awareness. You analyze this awareness. And when you look at it, it becomes just like space. And your experience is that this is the actual nature of the mind. This is the special insight of seeing that which I haven't seen before. And it is through this clear awareness that you do not become attached to the blissful states of shamatha, of calm abiding. It is because it is very blissful that you want to stay in this state for a long time. And you don't want to come out of it at all. And your wisdom, your awareness, or vipassana needs to see that, needs to recognize this subtle form of attachment, of clinging arising in the mind. And a sign of your being attached to the blissful state of shamatha is that you can always stay within that state. You always want to stay in that state. You don't want to move at all. You don't want to go around or move at all. You just want to stay there. And of course, it doesn't mean that you're not diligent just because you don't want to move around. Of course, you couldn't be within that state if you wouldn't have diligence. But still, there is this attachment that needs to be recognized, and so that is a fault. Actually, in the past, the Guru Jime Dorje has said, so when you're speaking of shamatha, and when you point out these faults that could arise of shamatha, don't talk about that. Don't tell other people about that, because then nobody wants to meditate. And so, anyways, it's hard for people. They can't develop such a state of stability, of calmness. And so, of course, no meditation will be without fault. But then, if you tell them that, then they might feel discouraged and then not practice at all. And then, in the end, they will just maybe just stay there in this state. And either they don't want to meditate, or they can't even get up anymore. And so no, it is different than a mundane way of staying. It's a different kind of staying. So he's not saying that there's a fault in the abiding quality, but then if one just focuses only on abiding, and one only, for example, teaches on abiding, then the quality of clarity is not achieved, and then they end up not really being able to meditate. And so basically what he's saying is that it needs to be combined with vipassana. So what he's saying is that you should not just teach shamatha, only that, and then later on you come to Vipassana, because then in the end they won't know how to meditate and will just stay within that state and can't really get out of it anymore. So it is okay for the mind to be relaxed and to calm down, but then also, even though you need to have this abiding quality, you also need to see what arises in the mind with clear awareness, which is the Vipassana. So in this way, actually Vipassana and Shamatha are practiced together. They need to be practiced together, not separately, not like necessarily one after the other. But basically you abide, you train the mind in abiding, and then you look at this abiding state with awareness, and you know what does not arise. And in this way, Vipassana actually is practiced together with Shamatha. So it actually is like one state, one so-called view. So basically Vipassana is nothing but the clear awareness that recognizes whether or not thoughts are present in the mind. And also it is the one that gains the experience that when the mind is free of thought, it is a very blissful state. So it is this clear awareness that needs to be sustained. And then at the same time, you develop an abiding quality. But then the awareness is aware of the abiding. So the clear awareness is aware of the fact that the mind is, that you are abiding. And then that clear awareness is something you need to look into. Thigten Somgen said in the co-emergent Mahamudra that it is like a crystal clear ocean, and what is it? Yeah, a crystal clear ocean, and so the state of Shamatha that is like adorned, adorned with flowers. So the Shamatha is like this state of a calm ocean, a single-pointed state. And then the waves, when waves appear in the ocean, the waves are nothing but the reflection and expression of the ocean. And with clear awareness, you recognize this. So basically, you develop a calm, abiding mind, but you still treat the clarity, the insight as more important. So the observance of what arises. And so this Vipassana is the clear awareness. And with this clear awareness, you recognize even the most subtle attachment that arises to the blissful state of Shamatha. And actually, once you have recognized it, by simply recognizing it, there's no need to actually do anything to it, by like thinking there's no need to like abandon it or deliberate meditation and so on. But by simply recognizing it very clearly, the subtle thought, the feeling will actually naturally go away on its own. So that's the quality of wisdom, awareness, or especially insight.
그래서 다 롱까지 토들 탑죠. 메라버가 레지티에서 세아지아 소리 장미 말에디 수타수거리 수타수죠. 다가서 타수야요 말이지. 서들 세분대로 내 탑지 세를 맞아가 직접 세민이 직자요 말이지. 뒤 탑지 그 셈당 랑게디고 셈니들이 못 죽고 차은 거예요. 셈지가 또 마도 렉도 말에 치발음이 렉도 말에 치발 강해들 내lok만 통외들이 땅가서 나도 정리들이 다다다 들들 내가 고아적으로다가 차음을 내lok은 셈코로 치보려 나갔다 그래지 별사지 사지해 보소를 사와들라 오 거기 그 셈코 내lok도 많이 해지 내lok들이 딱 제대로 다오 사와랑지 동바송 들상통들라 오 동바랑지 살았어 오 동바이 그 나갔다 차송 무슨 매봐 랑지사의 시대는 그렇지 동바에 뭐야 하고 시터봐 그렇지 타자 타치다 때리지 타 주양을 다 생다 남카 체면아서 다 도망바들 상통대 이런 배운 거를 그 생다 남카 체면도 선을 고하되 샤로 때들다 뒤를 나가 체면이야 그래서 듣기도 내다라서 받아지 양 로는 처방하는 샤로 샤로 대답이 좀 가려야 돼. 오다 스승이 연락 남자의 생년 제가 지내 무엇은 심이 좀 그랬어요. 맞이나 딱 잠소 시작하면서 어디서 들이 쉘ter 들이 무엇은 설치라는 게 샤로고 열마도서 파스로 열려고 요 말이 배대서 거기가 주탑이 세는 거라고 세도 나갔다고 차서는 들이 남부랑은 여기 정적 강원들이 랑가 센당 코데 이거 센데 승랑세도 주말이 살다 고아리 들리가 하고 지금 내로 시시데 상 통도다가 오 대다세 무슨 통마로 무슨 통로 말이 무슨 소리가 나오는 말이 나오는 말 때문에 데리들이 나오는 말들 레스 원하는 데리들이 들이 좋아서 사실이 점제기 좀 사바랑 저기들이 뭐지 점제가 왕도 손들이 다다다들 누가를 차는 거에 동당을 세고 내려만 통거든 누가를 데리니 못 통차는 내려 통소들이 탐지에 또만이 가리 싸워 또만이 싶어야 돼 나지 이제 대대 동마 차면 들 참아 동발 하고 그거를 뒤나니 따당 다지니마디 다 죽어대는 뭐 다지고 생겨 나오는 반대리 나오는 반대 다들 나오는 반대 나갔다 그래 이 대에다가 고아대 자고여서 했지.
So, for example, it is like the mind is like an ocean, a vast ocean that is deep and that is vast. And within an ocean, for example, you have many different animals, coarse animals and subtle animals and so on. But then from the side of the ocean itself, it makes no difference what animal there is, if they are large or small. All of the animals are only the temporary appearances, appearing due to temporary karma. But the ocean knows that all of these life forms all possess Buddha nature. So that is the ultimate view. And so the ocean sees that all beings have that same mind. And so then you look at that mind. Mind looks at itself. When you look at your mind, the experience becomes like a vast ocean or like space. And there is a clear knowing awareness that recognizes experience as this ocean-like or space-like state. You kind of realize you have an experience of my mind is how vast my mind is and open. And so it is like space, mind is like space, and it is without any shape or without any color or any form. It is not an object of investigation. And also, we mentioned yesterday, a characteristic of the mind is that it is a very profound or subtle, and also very clear. So the Buddha explained the mind in this way. And also, all phenomena of samsara and nirvana are included within the mind. There is nothing that doesn't come from this mind. In the 37 Bodhisattva practices, it says, the way things appear is your own mind. So here you resolve that all appearances are actually your own mind, all arise from the mind. And no matter how vast samsara may be, it all arises from the mind. So if we were to expand outwardly, then there are millions and billions of world systems, just like our world system, our galaxy that contains this Earth. There are many of these, millions and billions of such world systems that have a Mount Meru and so forth in different continents. And then just like in this world, in all the worlds, there are infinite sentient beings. So if you expand, then it becomes limitless. And also that is why we, for example, offer, that is what we think when we offer a mandala, according to the scriptures. We are offering the billionfold universe in the form of a mandala. So this is when we elaborate and it becomes infinite. But then since it is infinite, who really can decide, who can really see all of it, all of its extent? Nobody can really actually see all of its extent, like in terms of how much there actually is. But then in the end, all of it, even though it is so limitless, it all comes down to one single essence, and that is the mind itself. And every being has that same mind, the same essence. Whoever has a mind has that mind. So it all comes down to this one essence, this one thing, which is the mind. And that is the mind that you need to look at. So the mind is one and the same, but the difference lies in having or not having realized, having or not having seen the nature of the mind. So those who do not see the nature of the mind, they will perceive as self. And as a result, temporarily, their mind is like an ice block, wandering in samsara. And when you see the nature of the mind, then the mind becomes like a vast ocean. And so that is the state of Mahamudra, wherein all phenomena of samsara and nirvana are complete. Everything arises from this mind. And this mind, the natural state of this mind is empty, or emptiness. So that is the mind you should look at. And what you realize is that the nature of mind is that its essence is empty and its nature is clear. The empty essence is like space. It is not something that is identifiable. It is not a thing. But then there's also clarity. The nature is clarity, clear awareness, an awareness that recognizes, it knows of its own empty nature. Also, it is said that space and mind are not different. And when you realize that, that is the view of Vipassana. That is when you realize, when a real understanding of that arises, an experience arises, and how space and mind are not any different. And so even though space and mind are not separate, then still temporarily, due to the force of confusion in the mind which arises, again we experience different experiences of happiness and suffering and so on. That is because temporarily we are controlled by a confused state of mind. And that is because we perceive reality in a dualistic way. There is the inner grasping mind and the outer grasped at object. And we believe in the concrete, true existence, reality of that perception. And that is the fault. That is why we are tossed around between happiness and suffering and so on. If you do not grasp and you look at the mind as it is like an ocean or like a crystal or like a flower. For example, it is like a crystal because when in a crystal, or like in a mirror, everything is reflected to it within the mirror or the crystal. The mirror doesn't go to the object that it reflects, but the object is reflected in the mirror. And so similarly, all phenomena, all things are reflected in the mind. So it is like a crystal or like a mirror, and then it is also like space, meaning that all phenomena of samsara and nirvana, all of existence and all beings, everything has this one and the same mind. And when you see that clearly, when you know that is the view of Vipassana. And it is something that has always been there, and therefore the view of Vipassana is the seeing of what has not been seen before. And why has it not been seen before? It is because of this thought that an I exists as in me. And because of this, we accumulate karma. We create karma, and this karma causes us temporarily to take birth in the 6 realms of samsara. As it is said, cause and effect is the natural manifestation of one's moment-to-moment thoughts. So on a temporary level, on the relative level, we are driven by the force of karma, which leads to the appearance of the 6 realms of samsara. Ultimately, when you, from an ultimate perspective, as long as you do not see the nature of the mind, the ultimate nature appears as, within the mind, appears as the 6 afflictive emotions. But when you see the true nature of the mind, it all becomes emptiness, empty of self-nature. And what's the root of emptiness? It is to see that self and other do not exist separately. There is no duality, no division between self and other. That is what is meant with a lack of inherent self-sufficient existence. That is emptiness. And that is realized by Vipassana. So within the state of calm, you sustain clear awareness that recognizes that self and other do not exist. So therefore, do not grasp at the true existence of self and other. So in brief, it all comes down to this one mind, and that mind now thinks that there's an I that exists. And when you look at it, it becomes just like space. The experience of it becomes space-like. And so this is the seeing that is founded in calm abiding.
Peman damjadani chilan damal damjatame magupasam sangata machacho magupa peman jungne korato de pemung de peman damjadani chilan damjatame magupasam teji de tatangaso rame no ngai de choato glasoba pomonga de tamchedita de choato koratin kono ne dangita nyumo botuna ne onayang Seven 내록들이 하고 정도들이 제를 찾아서 지금 중국 마을바 배로다다 쪽 차기 되게 조금 마을바 세ven 내록 통화들이 세ven 내록 코라 딱히 토라 그 대답제를 착토해 봐야 돼. 다들이 공식이 내 잘라 힘바 차고지나 하고 세는데 대답제를 쭉 막 찾아서 잡아야지. Shamatha tava pimbe peta de 강해지는 들다다 다 초만에 코아들이 시발사 그럼 방어사 사제에서 뒤도 데레데 뒤도 되지는 이런 코아도 나듯이 대생구지요 바시 생분내로 되들이네 다진이들이 바시 다티들은 대하고서 생분내로 또 들랑 그때 담지 그 도지심 받자 왔더니 대사들 마차바 마진바 돈다다 마차 마지바 치모리데 지바서로 따면서 대달 가려들이 남도 장이 강샤로나 될 지바 마죠 봐서 지바 쪽으로 따면서 사실 진실들이 진 담은 진들이 지바체고 되게를 해서 아무리 빼대다가들이 상통 지바들 then hold in the Bamiba. Sayang to me, young some days, the Bamiba. Pena, Dedo, Mama, going to the Kaisha, several control Hako, Data, what it is, silent to me, Sepso, the Kama, Majimba, some, the Beto, that was the called Damini, Damage Maruba, Be, Data, sending you over to the Pungi Numo to the Naniam, Numo Maruba, there go it.
And then it is like a flower. So that is because it's like a lotus flower. It is that a lotus flower grows out of the mud, but it remains unstained, untarnished by the mud. That is the quality of a lotus flower. So that is the nature of the mind. So while it comes into the state, a samsaric state, the natural condition of the mind still remains untarnished by all the flaws of samsara. So for example, now we have this human existence, human body, and the five, consisting of the 5 elements and the 5 aggregates, and we have 6 kinds of sense perceptions, 6 kinds of feelings. And it is mainly because due to these 6 kinds of feelings that we dwell within samsara. And then with awareness, you recognize that. If there is awareness of the nature of mind, you recognize that out of self-grasping arise the 6 afflictive emotions and so on. So you recognize the natural state of what arises in the mind. And then you will not become tarnished by the fault of attachment, clinging attachment, even though you are in this existence, in this body, in samsara. If you have special insight, you will not become defiled by the faults of samsara. Also, this is what it says in the Mahamudra teachings. So while one is in samsara, one remains undefiled by the flaws of samsara, because one remains in a state of detachment. So one remains free from any clinging and any attachment to what arises. And so first there is a state of shamatha. There is a calm, abiding ability of stability, and then a clear awareness will recognize the subtle formation of attachment to this abiding state. And seeing it right away, one will not become attached to it. So this subtle grasping will not lead to clinging attachment. And that's why the mind remains free of attachment. First, when the Buddha first taught the Dharma, he said, in the very beginning, first you must recognize suffering. So first you must recognize that samsara is suffering. And second, you must abandon the origin of suffering. So first you must recognize suffering, and then on the basis of that you can recognize the nature of the mind. And then once you have recognized the suffering nature of samsara, so you recognize the true nature of samsara, and then you know gradually that self and other do not inherently exist. So in this way you gradually realize the nature of the mind. So it comes in steps. So not clinging and attachment are very coarse thought forms already. And more subtle is the state of grasping. So it begins with grasping and then it develops into clinging and attachment. So insight, Vipassana recognizes the subtle grasping, the formation of attachment as it arises. And it is said, in the Sakya actually, it is said that when there is grasping, you do not have the actual view. So when you fix it, there is no actual view. And no matter what thought it is, whether it is a positive or a negative thought, do not engage in grasping, do not grasp at it. Because if you grasp, you're not holding the actual ultimate view. And so that is because it begins with grasping. When there is grasping, grasping leads to clinging, and clinging leads to the accumulation of karma. And so with Vipassana, you see things. So although it's not that things are absent, but whatever is seen, you see things, but there is no grasping at these things. The mind remains clearly seeing these things. So whatever it is that appears, whatever one sees, whether it is pleasant or unpleasant, it's happiness or sadness, suffering, and so on, whatever one perceives, whatever is seen, one sees it as the magical play of the mind itself and does not really cling to the true existence of what appears, and knows that it arises all from within the mind. And if the mind remains clear, then there is simply no grasping at whatever arises. So that is why the mind is also said to be like a flower or a lotus flower, because the flower grows out of the mud of the earth, but it remains untarnished by the mud itself. And so similarly, a mind of insight, even though the 6 kinds of feelings may arise, one's abiding ability will not be disturbed. So meaning that even though various feelings may arise, one still does not become tarnished by the ordinary afflictions, meaning one does not pursue them or fall under their control.
Lani Sopiman song, Shene Rab the Timber, Sangtongit, Numong number Jabbar, she said it, you know what about the Namtori. They not talk Kanki, did not talk Kanki at the Lilang, Sangtong starting on a need, this is Ramjin getting meta pushing somebody at the hit to kill Monaman, John Chipati. It is immediately on that day by something about just a Lani also. Zumbi Shiba, the Anthony actually Jumutakari, nature is on routine and it is only by Jetera. Same with the bottom, the Tavacharo, Tiang by you, me, de la Soba, Semtera. Jim Rarif and the Somali. Don't need the Salam Sipa, Salam Bambazari, Salam Rubati, that was sent again now, Parliament. So the body on the Vashes. The Manzaba Paso, the Karen Magi, the Rang Charang Georgia, Theatre was the taller, the Telete, the consul, among the Manjama, she said, there is immediately on something about the Arcelani, so Donald Flang Tonga Tower, Theatre, Chungo in Answer Becara, Tanimo, not talking half of Shibati, latterly, number method shade. The Nam see the Ishiki Chepa that actually she laid the Flatonga Yunguri, Flaton territory, Taishi Yungur Kangrizilla. Nam see the Ishiki Chepa Chili Kangrizilla, Nam Sileta, not so no number than details of your the Gondana or Gay Hako, the same, or get also second number. There was so trying Yuri. Teverati take Nimbo and this Nimbo Tera, not a Tadi Chipare, Dela Namling Kabi, Tochisa de Diamarapia Songore, three Luxury Parasong Kabitri, Select Yam Teva Capitani, Solom Toso, Solom Talk on three Lamala Tepa, Mogu, Sentient, Sam Nije, three Docking Cherola, Tedong Tanang. They don't got chess on the theatre. There is a judiciary. Don't take some children and so on. Somebody in jail. Theatre of the two duty and night the one dig down with it out there. Tama to the other. There is a young theatre in Jokoyore. Important Simon and Didi. The theatre territory to make a lot of Sancho Sands. There is heavy by Jalasova. There is two. Don't have condition of Lamu starching Boymbari. The Lamu, the Tata, get tomato, the Namanaso, the Lama Jesus Shipati, 데라서 가선 거리 들리다다 뭐는 계속 하고 심지어 상주제 제라고 요리 얘들 사박체미 양등하고 보면 뭐 단진데 좀 마다베 좀 퍼나라지네 되다 대구보다 체면지 받대 연구요리 걔네들이 라만 먹은 지점을 때도 다낭송 들이서나 다낭을 마디 양성으로 당에 그 다낭을 삼라들이 나시 라걸 거지도 하지는 벌써 저도 남이 탐지 좋아라 다대로 거하대 동대 그네 지르는 거서 랑게 파 르제가 따르들이 차당 먹성게 점도만이 그네 지는 서는 게 되대 자의 강조하는 나시라 달라보이 송 대는 참아드니 대식증 부르나오이나 드니텔라 실감 탐지보고 가로 그래들 대식증 뭐 요리 속대들이 포진지지는 삼지 지내서 뭔지지를 접지는 말이 밥을 견디는 삼지 사진 구슬이 그때 사진 싸움 것이 다낭아 저는 고속을 사적선 말람이 대바다 다낭대 당내 대바다 다낭라고 지켜봐도 지는 대개들 남상들이 따라들이 받쳐본 것들이 폐받쳐보려고 그래 또지 지도를 제동 다낭장 고소를 제가 나시 사걸 고아지서 맞지는 벌써 소수마도 저게 중앙가들 상황말이란 지레지 들이 낭유몽한테 생각을 미나 이 시간에 마미나 다 유몽고 내가 없으니 답이라 그래서 차대요래 별 미망이 시발카리 다음에 실내 상성고는 별 시당치보다 빼야 그러나 예당치보다 있잖아 시당 과거를 아시려더니 용띠부터 도발요래서 아무래도 싸르이 시절 마음이 싸르이 시절이 하도 샘싸고 차대요래 나진이요 말이야 차 탑시다 참아 쫑요래 가래 쫑요래들 별에 세당 바차들 말시나 조보이들이 용보는 거 제와 치보 용나양 로망고는 냠지는 대는 냠지들이 세당 나무가 뒤따리 제와 참아 시작도고 딜라만을 그 대바다는 왕은 그 오늘 세당은 되지 대 탑시들이 떨어를 바차들 이 상태 바차 또 하고 요래 대탑시 떨어를 때마티들이 랑기디들이랑 나는 편주제 그래 잡을 물을 못 잡지 못해요. 얘는 아시자고 때다고 또때 독도 비밀 저도 받으리다. 이모 좀 시바데 이모 바디 랑기 시바는 좀들이 독 비밀 저다 그래. 그 세상 랑기 신었더니 파르서 여러 마테네 랑처 세상 랑기 먹을 때 까들이들이 랑진이 생각하다 뺏어고 대뜻 바탕심이야 동화 소통랑지 세상 사통을 시소 세븐에록들 랩게요래 대타도 하고 오 유목을 랑지 이시지 대사를 유목나 반좀 봤었나 대단히 유목 동안을 알기는 너는 싫었대 요리 정도 들이 타고는 매우나 버신 같이 야나 접속을 또 다른 상통의 민기 문제야지 저도 냠용들이 고반 냠용들과 같이 해서만 하래 애들이 상통도 받지만 이미 그렇게 실가 똑같이 상통을 해주시기 시간 얘기 다다 유무만 채용나 딱 가르쳐도 되나 따뜻한 라리 소비면 송하다 뒤체도로 되나 뒤지리들이 딴 유목나지를 이 시간을 또 두고요 이렇게 제바탕지 막고 쏘는데 막는 고통을 말이지 별로 유목을 찍으잖아 그래서 세상하고 모르더라 들이세라 들이 세상 미소가 들면 뚜도 지에 맞추바스 그래 상지 탑지 톡 맞추바스 도지 들이 세금을 도지야죠 그래 들이 저런 도지 창시 받아 세금내로 뜨고또 들이 센티 계셔미바 이제처럼 뭐 고인 못하고 판이 못하지 존존도 봐 대라서 보더니 대도리 용지 딱 공부만 해봐가 망고 쏜 거요래 전화들이다 유몽 좀 먼저 때렸더니 그래서 다 신이 상통도 딱 고쳐거래 맨리 맞아도 저래 상통 대가랑 따와래 대를 사자치미용 때더니 참아창부요래 이렇게 얘기하면 대답을 보고 그랬지.
So the view of Vipassana is the natural state of the mind, seeing the natural state of the mind. And that is what we call the view. And so in the 37 Bodhisattva practices, it speaks about, in the terms of Vipassana, Vipassana must be combined with or founded on a state of calm abiding. And Vipassana that is founded on a state of calm abiding abandons the afflictive emotions as they arise. And so an afflictive emotion is a thought within the mind. So whatever thought arises within the mind, if you stay within the natural state of Vipassana, within the view, this state is just like fire that naturally burns away all the wood. The thoughts being the wood arising, and the awareness just naturally, on its own, just keeps burning away whatever arises naturally. So that is what we call the or destroying the afflictive emotions. And then also in the 37 practices, it goes on and says that then this state overcomes the four formless absorptions of shamatha. So there is several different states of absorption, states of calm abiding. And it is Vipassana, the clear insight, that transcends those four formless or any formless absorption, any absorption. So the mind is able to abide still when you have developed the state of Vipassana, of Shamatha. And then there still is some grasping in the mind, however, and that remains unrecognized. So there is this subtle grasping that is called, in the scriptures, grasping in an affirming way or in a negating way, or grasping at things as being existing or non-existing, or being neither existing nor non-existing, and so forth. But all it is, as we mentioned, Milarepa had said, the progression on the Bhumisandha path is merely the increasing clarity of one's seeing of emptiness. So it's the development of one's realization. That is all it is. And therefore, don't grasp at whatever it is that arises in any way. That's all that needs to be done. Just don't grasp at anything whatsoever. And eventually, as you train in that, whatever arises then will naturally become liberated. Since you never grasp at it, it naturally on its own, it dissolves. So that is what you habituate to in overcoming the afflictions and thoughts and transcending those four formless absorptions through the special insight that sees. The special insight that sees the afflictions is what transcends a mere state of meditative absorption. So in brief, the view of Vipassana from a practical meditative perspective is, it is the awareness, it is your clear awareness that recognizes clearly whatever thought or emotion, whatever arises in the mind. And this recognition and not grasping at what arises is the non-conceptual state. And also, for that we should know the difference between the normal consciousness and primordial wisdom. And Vipassana, combined with Shamatha, is the state of primordial wisdom. It is basically Vipassana is the state of primordial wisdom. So what is the difference between consciousness and primordial wisdom? The consciousness is, when we say consciousness, we refer to the ordinary mind of thinking that an I exists. So even though one meditates, there's still, in Shamatha, there still is a little grasping, some perception there that there is this I, a me. And so then, for example, when you meditate, even though you do meditate, there still is this notion of I meditate and I know this, and I have recognized, I have realized this, I have realized the nature of the mind. So So there is these subtle feelings related to the I that still arise within the mind. And Vipassana overcomes this grasping at the I. So Milarepa, when he gave teachings to Lukti Repa on meditation, he also said that when you gain the experience, although you gain the experience of calm abiding, a meditative state, you still need to accumulate merit. You need to create virtue. And so what that really means here is that it is important to also not just sit and meditate, but to cultivate faith and devotion to the Guru, and to cultivate love and compassion for sentient beings. And also in the Tantras or in Dzogchen, it is said we need to have a pure view toward our Vajra brothers and sisters or our Dharma friends. But of all of this, in brief, what's most important is love and compassion for all sentient beings. And the reason, the fault that hinders us realizing the nature of the mind, hinders our practice, that what prevents us is nothing but our selfishness. It is the self-clinging. And as long as we have not purified self-grasping, we will perceive things as real and believe in the ideas that we have about things in our mind. And so from that perspective, so for as long as we do see things in this way, it is important that we focus on the relative level, the relative bodhicitta, the four immeasurables, and so on. So, as we said before, first you must recognize suffering. And it is very important, actually, very precious to be able to cultivate faith and devotion to the Guru. But then there is different kinds of people. Some people can cultivate devotion to the Guru and some cannot. It is actually said we should see the Guru as the actual Buddha. But then for most people, actually, devotion devotion is a little bit difficult. Actually, what's a little easier than devotion is to cultivate love and compassion for sentient beings. If you cultivate love and compassion for sentient beings over and over again, then it's only through that the grasping to the me, the I, and a true existence of appearances and so on will actually naturally become purified. And of course, also through devotion to the Guru and a pure perception, a pure view towards your Dharma friends. Especially in the Vajrayana, that's important. In the Vajrayana, it is said that we should see everything that appears and exists as the deity. When you see everything that appears and exists as the deity, you have perfected the generation stage of the secret mantra. And so that is why we need to train in seeing things that way, because otherwise we cannot become liberated from our self-grasping and impure perception, the conceptual mind. And for as long as we view things through the lenses of the conceptual mind, through the intellect, we will always be obscured by attachment, anger, and ignorance. So, for example, in the Vajrayana, when we say that the outer universe is all a boundless celestial palace, and and the inner beings within the universe, they are all gods and goddesses, they are all deities. So when we say to see things that way, actually that's how things really are. Because all these beings, actually, all that appears and exists is the natural reflection of Buddha nature. And so how we can see it is that because they all possess Buddha nature, then if you encounter a male person with compassion, that's why you see them as Chenrezig. And if you encounter a female with compassion, you see her as Tara. And in this way, it is said that we should see everyone as a Buddha, and that is why, for example, we see the Noble Sangha is an emanation of the Buddha. For example, their activities are Buddha activities, and so this is how a pure view arises in you. So train in faith and the pure view to the point where you fully trust in your pure view. And actually, if you really gain such certainty in your pure view, that will be very beneficial in clearing away obstacles. So it's important to cultivate love and pure view towards your Vajra siblings or Dharma friends, and also a pure perception toward the entire universe and all sentient beings. So when you see that everything that appears and exists is the form of the deity, then you have perfected the generation stage of the secret mantra. For example, when you look at the 5 elements, their nature are the 5 dakinis, the goddesses. Or inside the mind, you have the 5 afflictive emotions. When they ripen, they become the 5 wisdoms. It's just the difference between ripe and unripe, or mature and immature. The difference is that's what the difference of having and not having Vipassana and Shamatha and Vipassana. Yeah. So, for example, if one possesses this union of Shamatha and Vipassana, somebody who gets very angry, for example, actually the nature of that anger possesses all perfect qualities in its essence, essentially. And so how is that? It is because when you are angry, really angry, then the mind is actually very clear in that moment. And there is no other thought within the mind. The mind is so sharp that there is no other thought, not even a thought of self and other. So therefore, the clarity can completely outshine or destroy in this moment all karmic imprints in the mind. So normally, this is not how we deal with anger. Normally, when we get angry, then for example, when somebody said something negative to us, insulted us, then we get very angry at them. And when we don't recognize the clarity within the anger, then that destroys the love between friends. Even if they have loved each other for a very long time and spent many years together, when the moment anger arises, all of that love can be destroyed by the anger. This is the power that the anger has. It can completely destroy all the other thoughts in the mind. Or for example, if it is between a guru and a disciple, and then the disciple gets angry, then all of the kindness of the guru having given instructions and empowerments and transmissions and all your devotion and your pure view and your faith that you have had are instantly destroyed by this moment of anger. And so that is the power that anger has. It destroys something that's actually very difficult to destroy. It's very difficult to destroy love, a deep bond of love. But anger can even destroy that bond of love. And of course, that is also founded in a dualistic perception. And so some people, for example, when normal people would actually, when they get sick, for example, receive treatments and so on. Now, some people, even though they have this precious human body that we cherish so much, then even end up committing suicide. So what people do is they transform something that is medicinal into poison. So we need to turn it around and turn the poison into medicine by overcoming or transforming the afflictive emotions. And so what does it mean to destroy the afflictive emotions? It means that you recognize their true nature. You know the true nature of these afflictions. And when you know the true nature, then that is like poison transforming into medicine. For example, when you know the nature of your anger, so when anger arises and you are clear, you will not look at the object of your anger, who made you angry, but you will look directly at the essence of the anger itself. And then you recognize that itself is the mind, and it becomes clear and vast like space. Actually, it is so pristinely clear, that moment when you recognize your anger. The mind is utterly clear, and there is not a single other thought within the mind. And this lack of thought also is the empty nature of the mind. So this is how you can find clarity and emptiness, the nature of the mind within the anger that arises momentarily. And so within that, you realize primordial wisdom. you come to the actual nature of the mind. You realize that actually this affliction is primordial awareness itself, is that. And that is what we call the destruction of the afflictive emotions, of any of the 5 afflictions. So in brief, when you recognize clearly, it is just like having fire in a stove, and that fire can burn away any amount of wood logs that you put in there. So if there is a fire of awareness, then any thought or emotion that arises will naturally be burned, consumed by it. So that is why Milarepa had said, one's meditation must be imbued with an experience. It has to be an actual experience, and that's very important. And this is how we actually cultivate an authentic state of shamatha. So now when thoughts and afflictive emotions arise, as it is said in the 37 Bodhisattva practices, you see them as the moment they arise. And with clear awareness, they transform into the 5 kinds of wisdom. And so regarding that, there are many different explanations, many teachings, but this is just a brief outline. I'm just taking one affliction as an example, but it's the same with all the other afflictions. So now we were speaking about anger and how you should look at the essence of anger, and this applies to all of the other afflictive emotions. But so for example, when we take anger as an example, when anger ripens or matures, it becomes the Buddha Akshobhya, belonging to the Vajra family. Akshobhya is said to be in the mind, the enlightened mind of all the Buddhas. So the mind is like a Vajra, and for example, that is represented also by the Buddha Vajradhara. Vajradhara represents the nature that is beyond birth and death. Because when you realize the nature of the mind, you realize that the mind cannot be born and it will not die. So that is what you recognize, and it is like a Vajra, because a Vajra is invincible, so nothing can destroy you or that Vajra, but the Vajra can destroy everything else. So meaning that the Vajra can destroy the afflictive emotions that arising in your own mind. So that's the meaning of the Vajradhara, or being like a Vajra or Akshobhya. It is the ability to destroy the afflictive emotions in the mind. And so when you understand that this understanding is the beginning of the view of Shamatha and also Vipassana in union. And so actually there is no need to actually separate them in any way, but they are practiced together in such a way. And within such a state, actually, all the qualities of Mahamudra are also complete. So understand this.
시락들이 시락이 바로도 서마디 강의들이 세계 내록 돌때 시락 바로서 이소 거당 음실로 지난 비앙서 송바리 내록 돌아 티바고는 메스 들이 말아비 바로도 서마 적어는 소리 유몽랑 창조관의 시사와 로나 메스 유몽랑 창조게 시사와 이시리 이시시라들이 이시들이는 하나다 사람 적대보다 이시반이지 이시들 야와 탐제 이시랑도 적지는 산제 뜻을 사제 장미바 대토 적 가래 동거리들 대삼지 서 것은 죽어서 longo 쪽에서는 이 것은 저 탐제들이 것은 건강을 마대바리 자식의 땅나와 좀 타다다래 얘나 대토 적을 늘 가래지 이시절로 더 타고요래 이시시 바들들이 또 남시 이시는 민송나 들이 뒤쳐라다 이시 돌아들이 무슨 탑재가 돼 수지도 상계의 상대나 다다 남시를 나기지를 나오냐면 돼요래 서로 열대 나바 탑재 10에 남시이지 이시들은 서로 열대 나바를 니도 오 이시라는 대로 쳤다 기다나 다센 남카타 딜 파브를 들이다 샘다 남과 체면은 샘 남과 체면 받는 파는 남과를 니베와 하고래 그 세고대로 운이데 돌때 샘 남과 따버들 처음에가래 차용을 다 이시지 이시지 체벌이 코데이가 참되었지 이시지 되리 샘들이 참되는 남시들이 참되요 오면 참되요 하고 요 말이 별로 너무 치보되나 오디 야가 로마 탐지지 너무 치보지가 랑게 야가로다 하고 요래 너무 찌게 야가로다 자 터져서 봐 좋아를 좋으지 제목이 되지 왔더니 도리성들이 답보시면 탐지래지 제 당진의 기능을 로지 제발들이 제다 너무 찌게 제서 너무 저 하고 라라 소소들이 같이 깜로 같이 차로 같이 저로 너희들이 요래 소소소소 되는 라게 내려라고 막도 배나들이 제대로 남시들도 매요래 제 가시가 로아로 차지 차왔다 그래서 제 탑지는 남시 요래 들어오지 남바다 시험 보조만 남시 요래 이 남시도 뭐 또래시리 제들이 살도 너무 이식무시 송서 그 사자체 몰라 사와들 탑지 똥만이래스 똥만이 탑지 똥만이지는 들이 그러면 제바사를 한 거예요. 레줌레요래 따뜻한 번에 대회를 똥과 연발을 뛰는 이 시대 똥과 연발의 이 시대 똥과 심취기 시바 따뜻한 무슨 생계 그때 탐지 들이 참이라 제그랑 좀 따바 뛰는 밥상은 똥발에서 하고 그러라. 우리 뒤 똥발 밥상이 심취기 어따 똥발이 뛰는 방식이 소리 딱 이식 하고 그래. 이식하는 거랑 이렇게 척딱 제대로 들이 주제 싸워가지고 샘도 싸워주고서 샘을 싸워지는 샘과들이 딴 갔다 딱 은혜지는 파고 그래 대파들이 다 하고서 다 이시지 남치 이시는 분들이 살을 똥부 이식 뭐여서 살아는 탐지 똥반이 똥반이 연발이 심취지라 다 이시지라 다 시바싸워서 다 상속을 따와데 시바싸고 공요래 홀라 요리들 요제 니기요 말이 요제 니기요만 남과다 찍던지 매야 수장지 있고 말이 사제키야 막통스 매만만이 호대거지 호대 탐지지 남과다 제기사 들이 남지 적용을 남지 서럽이고 가다들 습상 말에도 적진지 서럽들 뒤에 호대이가 되니 다지디를 오랑 kho와지 좋은 거래지 어디는 이미 산쪽선 못 지르더니 답부산지 내가 토리스도 갖다 잡아놔서 그러나 이거 샤려고 그래지 서럽제 제대로 남지 저로 진짜 좋아요 말이지 대다와 하고 그랬더니 시기용 대대가 살다 동부지 시기에서 이 시대에 의해서는 이 시대 다 가도 다다다고 상토도 따와디 저도 남갔다 들 말하리 봐 그래서 전에 습대오 차물이 대학체물이 내가 먹는 똥바가리 나기 이미도 돼 샘대오 차서면 샘코는 다 나기 이미도 서로 적인이 맞아서 그선 코 적다 받아서 리다리 맞아서 딱 산지 정말 조금도 놓고 잡으러 장을 봐야는 동문이지 세부 조절이 이식을 하셔야지 납식이랑 도와를 그래 내가 이식이랑도 따다다 버렸다고 생각한다면 하고 납식 장은 코른도 받아왔는데 좀 대이시제 하고 성사는 되니 과자학사 말에 저다 나와 탐조랑 것에 나와라고 sem으로 다 줄을 다라는 셈제가 나왔다고 찾대와 뒤는 내서 들이대더라 사자체보도 야는 코른도 받아왔는데 대하고 성사니 코르교는 코상콩이 얼마래 세월 이베베는 니 싸워가래 나중에 제일이다 나중에 나 용변을 제듯이 대야 진짜 나그서 요래 나오 이밖에 연배 가지면 잡으면 많이 장가가디 이 남년 심이 막 카바발이 나한테 쏘고 요래 대니 몰라들 제시되오라 들 나도 역셔도 그래 저런 거 같으면 대다 하고는 이 샘마인 받을 저도고 많이 받을 세력을 남성 들이대 남시 이시를 살도 동부 이시에서 사제적 보게 돼 동바양이 말이 시야요 봐 딱고 타탄 잡아 동바 제가 타탄 잡아도 이시지 근데 이시제라 다 오사를 낳고요 이시를 오사와들 거래 생포로데 세배 생사고도 가다 생포로 저 딱지 맞도록 살me 요한 디제 오사리 들이 제발을 배서 냐마 받아면나 angin yama padaran bamji so tsen dewe sama mamba na dreamy taps chula so dreamy taps matula sa ye be gomyang sa de so da segu osawa da yi ni be osa da ha ko na bari na wa tam ji chaya yo ma de jama sharu wa da ji di rangi de yek ro yo be na de jama ta to ro jama ta be ten zen so dele tele chana jikta dele zamor 차응야 요말이 또만이 니바라 다운야 요말이 차다기 와서 차당자로 땅놓은 걸로 되게 들이 데렸다고 샤롱을 들이 데렸다 제대로 무슨 때 마실 이시면 마실 다 남지 되게 다 이니 우리들이 다 나게 되다 쳐봐 내도 니니 우리들이 되게 다 가는 체험 거를 배 내로 또다 마도 제발대로 남시 이시되는 사자제 보지 봐도 이시를 하면 이시들이 딱 그대니가 이해라고 되래 이랑 이시나 거기에 맞도 나한테 또 그래 됐다고 하고 그래지 대변하는 동반이송 동반하는 사랑이 빠니송 탑랑을 보는 말에 배sem 대화 지금만들이 대화티 뭐지 동반이리스 첫 대는 거 올랐다는 데 동반이리스 동반이서 싸워 동반이 뭐 싸워 하고 성스 싸워지다 럽지 다티라 그래 럽죠 다 독치를 빠지를 봐 독치를 빠지들이 럽들이 럽은 거라 다지 이거만 럽이 시켜버 럽이 시키 뭐 어쩌 버면 가가를 마도 들이 제가 다 왔다는 파워지
So this is given the name Mahamudra, but in brief, what it really means is it is transcendent wisdom. What is Vipassana? It is the perfection of wisdom. So what's the perfection of wisdom? It is to see the nature of the mind. We mentioned yesterday a quote by the omniscient Longchen Rabcham. He said that when you realize the nature of your mind, there is no higher learning than that. And also Milarepa, when he taught on the 10 parameters, he says that aside from exposing the hidden fault or the illusion, the illusory nature, the untrue nature of the falsity. Aside from recognizing the falsity of the afflictive emotions, there is no other perfection of primordial wisdom than that. So this is how Milarepa resolved the nature of primordial wisdom. And so we have different kinds of wisdom. We have worldly beings and wisdom beings and so on. But it is said that within the expanse of primordial wisdom, all the Buddhas are one. So we are taught to bring all the Buddhas after 3 times into one. So you may wonder, how am I going to bring all these limitless Buddhas all into one? It is because they have one essence. All appearance externally has the nature of the 3 kayas. For example, the Sambhoga kaya and the Nirvana kaya appearing. But it is said that the 6 realms of samsara even, nothing transcends the nature of the 3 kayas. No matter how vast appearance may be, in its true nature, it transcends all the extremes of elaboration. It is beyond all limitations, without any concept. And so that is realized by primordial wisdom. So when you understand primordial wisdom, this is how you can gather into one all the Buddhas in all this infinity into the expanse of primordial wisdom. So also we speak about the difference now between consciousness and primordial wisdom. It's the same mind, but the difference lies in having or not having ripened, matured that mind. When we mature our mind, our consciousness, all of us sentient beings will attain the state of enlightenment, which is Sangye in Tibetan. And Sang means to have cleared away, having cleared away the dualistic perception of self and other of the ordinary consciousness. The ordinary consciousness, the consciousness perceives a self, that it thinks that there is an I. And the consciousness is projects outward, and being projected outwardly, it discerns the various external appearances. It knows various external objects. That's the definition of the consciousness. And the definition of the primordial wisdom or awareness is that it realizes the non-dual nature of self and other. So it is still the same mind, but only when you realize the nature of the mind, you recognize that self and other do not actually exist separately, and that mind is indivisible from space. So that is the realization of primordial wisdom. When you see the nature of the mind, the primordial wisdom is wisdom because it is free of any doubt. There is no doubt in the mind that mind is really like space. It is a complete certain experience. One experiences mind as space with complete certainty. And this is called the great, vast primordial awareness. Vast because it pervades all of samsara and nirvana. The mind is all pervasive. So the consciousness, this dualistic consciousness, is actually also all pervasive. It's the same mind, but we call it consciousness because we don't recognize that the mind, our own mind, actually is all pervasive, but it is. And so a big tree, for example, if you think of a big tree that has a root and the trunk, the tree trunk knows that the branches and the leaves and so on are all part of the tree. It doesn't feel it's separate from them. For example, the lower parts of the tree, the root, are the lower realms of the 6 realms of samsara, and the upper parts of the tree are the higher realms, the 3 higher realms, and the pure lands and so on, and the leaves and the fruit and so on. But it's all one and the same tree. There's just different parts to the tree depending on whether one has cultivated self-grasping or altruism, but it's still the one and the same tree. And so the branches and the leaves don't recognize that, and some of the branches, they wither, and some break off, and some are destroyed, somehow are broken. And the branches of the trees suffer because they don't recognize their true nature of being the tree. So consciousness suffers. Consciousness experiences suffering. And so primordial wisdom transcends suffering because it recognizes non-duality. It is the same mind, the essence, the very nature. When you look at the true subtle nature of the consciousness, the nature of consciousness is actually primordial awareness. When you see its subtle nature, you see primordial awareness. And so that's the meaning of Mahamudra, this term Mahamudra actually. So this term, this Maha, or is the greatness, a great seal, it means great seal. The greatness is, it means this vast expanse of emptiness. And so what does this emptiness mean? It does not mean anything nihilistic. It doesn't mean that there's a denial of anything. So there is something, there is an awareness. So it's not just a mere nothingness. Even though it is empty, it is also clear. It is clear awareness. Empty and clear awareness. It recognizes the nature of samsara and nirvana, that all phenomena, so how we understand how this consciousness finally recognizes emptiness is by seeing that all appearances, all compounded phenomena actually are basically we can't find the smallest particle. So basically there is emptiness. You can't find the smallest particle, the indivisible particle of any phenomenon. So all compounded phenomena are, these compounded phenomena, because they are compounded, are impermanent, and for this reason they are empty. And this is how we can understand emptiness. So this is how clear awareness ascertains primordial wisdom. So the one who ascertains, the one who recognizes it, is clear awareness or primordial awareness. Actually, they are the same. And regarding its recognition, it is said that do not inquire into the root of phenomena, but inquire into the root of the mind. And the root of the mind is that it is indivisible from space, and it is free from all mental, conceptual elaborations. And this space-like unelaborated state is what we call primordial wisdom. Or we call that consciousness transferring or transforming into primordial wisdom. So that is what is meant with emptiness, this Maha state of the Mahamudra, the greatness, the great space, the clear awareness that is a vast expanse. And that is what we call the view of Vipassana. And so when we say it is there is something, it's not really there, it doesn't exist because you cannot grasp it. It's not material, it's like space. No one can grasp it. Not even the Buddhas have seen it. It is not an existing thing. And likewise, however, you cannot say it doesn't exist because it is the basis of Samsara and Nirvana. So it is space-like, and its nature is spontaneous existence, a spontaneous accomplishment. In Dzogchen, there are these two terms, Gadag and Hlundrup, and Gadag refers to the primordial purity, which is the pure, clear nature of the mind, and then Hlundrup is the spontaneous presence, so that even though things are primordially empty, due to the natural clarity of awareness, there is a spontaneous presence, and all the phenomena of samsara and nirvana spontaneously manifest by the nature of things. So by the nature of things, meaning when there is self-grasping, that naturally creates samsara, and when there is altruism or precious bodhicitta, that naturally creates the countless pure lands and the pure forms of Buddhas and so on. So that is the natural creation is the spontaneous presence, meaning that no one has created it. So that is the quality of the seal of Mahamudra, or the great seal, the mudra part. And so what is this, to summarize it, what is this state of Vipassana? It is the clear and empty space-like nature of the mind. Milarepa also explained this state as the state of calm abiding is a very blissful state. And then within this blissfulness, this blissful state, you find emptiness. And within that you find a clarity. So emptiness means that you realize that self and other do not exist inherently. You realize that there is only an appearance of duality because there are different bodies. But the mind is one and the same. And when the mind is pure, then the countless Pure Lands and Nirmanakayas and Sambhogakayas manifest. But however many manifest in however many different ways, they all are a creation of mind itself and nothing else, not separately existing from the mind. They are the natural expression of primordial awareness. Just like the six realms of samsara are the natural expression of the afflictive emotions or of the dualistic consciousness. And then the natural expression of bodhicitta or primordial wisdom are the three higher realms and the pure lands and so forth. So in Mahamudra, the term mudra or the seal is that it means that the mind that is the vast mind is free, liberated from the bonds or the knots of samsara. There is no more duality between samsara and nirvana. And one realizes that the one who wanders in samsara and samsara itself are actually inseparable. One realizes, as it is said in the 37 practices, that appearances are one's own mind. When you realize that all appearances are your own mind, then, and you realize that mind is you realize that on the basis of knowing that mind is all pervasive. Since your mind is all pervasive, all appearances are the mind. And then you sustain that state. And sustaining that state leads to the realization of Mahamudra, which is a realization of non-duality. So duality arises because there is first a perception of a self, and that leads to the perception of other. And that is why we continuously wander in samsara. Everything is about me, me, me. For example, there's my tea, and this is mine and mine, and so on. Day and night, this thought of me, me, really is accumulated in our mind like snowflakes falling down. It becomes stronger and thicker in our mind. And the antidote to it is to sustain clear awareness, which melts the ice block of self-grasping. And that requires an ongoing state of non-distraction. It is said that non-distraction is the path of all the Buddhas. So the nature of the mind that is realized through Vipassana or Mahamudra is clear and empty. And the clarity part, the clarity aspect of the mind is what dispels the fault of nihilism. And the emptiness aspect is what dispels the fault of eternalism. Also, it is said that the nature of primordial wisdom is luminosity. So what does it mean to say luminosity? It means the mind is clear in its natural state. When you rest naturally, there is this natural, lucid experience of feeling fully clear and bright. When the mind is free of all the thoughts, the mind is naturally clear and luminous. Also, when Milarepa gave teachings to Bardabom, he taught her on shining the light of mindfulness that illuminates the darkness, and he explained to her the nature of luminosity in this way, that when you realize that self and other do not exist, you realize luminosity. And so that means that later, when you see that even though you see things, self and other, you know that they do not really exist. Then also later in the bardo, even though things appear, you recognize all appearances. While they appear, they actually are illusory by nature. And when you know that things do not really exist, then they will dissolve as they arise. And so therefore, no real frightening, deluded bardo experiences will manifest, because you have developed what is called an illusion-like samadhi. And that dispels all fearful and confused perceptions. So that is the nature, the meaning of Mahamudra, or the Great Seal, which is the Great Seal of empty expanse, and the clarity, the luminosity that knows the illusory nature of all appearances. And therefore, even if things appear in a negative way, there is no resentment against them. And when things appear in a positive way, there is no attachment. And being without attachment and aversion against appearances, the mind abides within a state of great equanimity. So now this is how we transform the ordinary consciousness to primordial wisdom. Now, as long as we have not recognized that, and our focus is mainly on the appearances of this life, the ordinary dualistic consciousness sees everything in a polarized way. There is self and other, there is happiness and suffering, everything is this or that, this side or that side. Always everything comes in two. And it is because of dividing things in this way that we continue to encounter difficulties. Actually, that consciousness that perceives things in this dualistic way, that consciousness itself is not a separate thing from primordial wisdom. It is primordial wisdom, but we call it consciousness for as long as we have not recognized that. And whenever you recognize its nature, it becomes Mahamudra or primordial awareness, which actually are one and the same. And this state of Mahamudra or primordial awareness is the basis of all of Samsara and Nirvana. So Samsara and Nirvana is one and the same thing. It is just not realizing it is what we call Samsara, and realizing it is what we call Nirvana. And that's the only difference. And so also Milarepa explained how a skillful path, he introduced a skillful path on how to come to realize one's intrinsic awareness. And so he said that first you experience bliss. And within the experience of bliss, you find emptiness. And within the experience of emptiness, you find clarity. And within the experience of clarity, you find intrinsic awareness. So how does that happen? So first you experience the bliss of calm, and then you look at the essence of bliss. And then nothing is found. The essence of bliss is empty. This is how you find emptiness in bliss. And then as you find emptiness in bliss, there is clarity in the finding. So therefore, in emptiness, you find clarity. You know it's empty. And then within clarity, that's where you find intrinsic awareness. Because the clarity then is the intrinsic awareness, finally. That's what you finally realize. And so this is also how Dzogchen resolves the natural state. He calls it Rigpa, or this intrinsic awareness. And the essence of this intrinsic awareness is the same as what we call the primordial, non-dual primordial wisdom. So we give it many different names, but actually it all has the same nature. This Rigpa, or intrinsic awareness, or primordial wisdom are one and the same, of one and the same essence. So this is how we resolve or can understand the view or the natural state. And the Lord Mapa said to Milarepa, and then he said, I do not see phenomena, but I see the nature of phenomena. I do not see consciousness, I see primordial wisdom. I do not see sentient beings, I see Buddhas. When you see the view of reality itself, the nature of all phenomena, then you have understood the natural state, the nature of things. And that is what we call the state of Buddha. That is when you see the Buddha. So, Dharma friends, many dashi dele to you, and see you tomorrow.
Thank you. Dorji Rinpoche tashi dele.
Tashi dele Rinpoche kadenche.
Lolo se.
Sanin Jayon Rinpoche.
Sanin Jayon. Wajapur, everybody sangha. Yeah.
Which offers this milk tea to all at the Sangha.
Oh, home, oh, home, oh.
And we said when I'm drinking the milk tea, then all of you will not be hungry.
Thank you very much to Garchen Rinpoche for your precious teachings. We rejoice to all Dharma brothers and sisters. Next session will be by Dorzen Rinpoche, starting at 9:30. We would now like to invite all our panelists to turn on video and microphone to say our goodbyes and good night to Garchen Rinpoche.
How was this morning?
Dharma brothers and sisters, before we leave for the break, we'd like to share on Garchen Rinpoche's wish on having a permanent premise in Singapore. So the funding has been raised since 2011, and we are currently in the construction phase of the permanent premise. So although we have been making good progress, but we have challenges like COVID-19 that we